Calling all Lasso and leadership fans, join us on this journey to a better, kinder, more compelling way to lead. We're taking you through a journey out of the hit series Ted Lasso and exploring what leadership lessons exist, and there are tons. But there's a spoiler alert. We will assume that you've watched each episode that we tackle, and we generally aim for about 15 minutes per podcast. So we've put this podcast together to really nerd out on the series of Ted Lasso and leadership. And we're having a lot of fun pulling out some leadership lessons that may be unnoticed, underappreciated, and ones that are, just really, really fun. So basically, we've created a public Ted Lasso fan club, book club, and global conversation. Jason, who are you?
I'm Jason. I'm the co-host with you, Garth. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the head of school over at Rundle College. And more than anything, in the purpose of this podcast, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. So what about you, Garth? Tell us a little bit more.
Garth Nichols. I'm based in Toronto, and I'm vice principal at Havergal College. I also teach, and I also coach. Shout out to my senior basketball team. Made it to the finals, put in a good effort. Took home the silver, but super proud of that team. Our hashtag was believe. So there you go.
Congratulations, Garth.
But I do have an apology to everyone. Last week in last episodes, we spoke to Dr. Kathy Bishop, who was amazing in so many ways, except I kind of blew it at the end. I cited my leadership lesson from episode 9, this episode that we're doing today. It was Roy Kent, touching the believe sign as he walked off. But that is the wrong episode. But we're going to write that to this aptly named episode, All Apologies.
Wrong episode, but great moment nonetheless, Garth. I'm glad you brought it up. It's worth saying twice, so let's come back to it. And speaking of conversations, we continue to have great listener feedback from our episodes, Garth. We have now hit about 15 countries around the world. We have yet to get onto the South American continent, so we're looking that way, and Antarctica will likely be the last one to fall. But speaking of listener feedback, Garth, what have you been hearing out there?
Yeah, I've had quite a few people reach out to me about Kathy's appearance on the show. It was really nice. I have to give a shout out to all my Royal Roads University colleagues that I worked with over the past 3 months, the Much Music Video Dance Party crew, and the Spartan Chickens. They're really those names. That's a whole other episode. They're really enjoying it. They like the actionable items that we leave them with, but they're really a fan of the length of it, and I don't know what to take from that. But what about you, Jason?
No, stick with it. And this is a true story. My parents are still listening, and now they've even realized that there's an actual Ted Lasso episode. I think they thought I was making it up this whole time, but they do love it. So that's outstanding. And on a related note, I'd like to thank Livewire Calgary and Aaron Toombs for featuring this podcast on a national news story. It was pretty special for them to do a bit on us. And, nevertheless, I have to believe that with my parents' viewership, Brett and Jason Sudeikis are probably seeing a bump in their viewership and royalties. And I think the least they could do is join us for a 5-minute spot. So let's stay on it, Garth.
We can dream big, dare to dream, all that stuff. But hey, listen, we've got another guest today. So why don't you take it away, Jason?
Sure. Dr. Keith Vandermeer. Now, Keith is a seasoned school leader, having spent over a decade in schools, K-12, private and public systems. Beyond being a great human being, Keith is an expert in team dynamics. His academic work in this area has brought several insights that he continues to share while professing at the University of Lethbridge and principaling at Lethbridge Public School Division. Now, all the way from LA, and that's Lethbridge, Alberta, Dr. Keith Vandermeer, welcome to our show.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you reading that great human being part. I put that in there about myself, but it sounded good when you said it. I really
That's awesome. Hey, listen, before we get too far into this, because before we hit record, I'm aware now how close these two are, and they could go on for days here. Before we get too far into this, Jason, give us your 30-second summary of the episode.
No problem, Garth. Here it is. Number 1, my man Roy Kent's performance is declining, okay? And Ted and the coaches grapple with sitting him down on the bench. Rebecca starts to reveal to Ted that she hired him so that the team would fail. And Keely and Roy, they get a little more serious in their relationship. And it's in these moments where Roy's niece shares some wise insights about ego and leadership. And I know we're going to get to that a little bit more.
Yeah, great summary. I love what you pulled out there. And with that, I'll let you know that Beard is now my favorite character, especially in this one. In
Surprised
particular,
it
it's
took you this long.
I know, right? Particularly in this one where he confronts Ted with Nate early on in the episode. He gives him that, blunt feedback about Roy's position on the team. They use data, they provide a plan, and Ted responds, "Thanks, but no thanks," basically. Like, I appreciate your input even when it's wrong. Then later, he takes him on in a bar, what he calls Ted's selfishness. And I think that's a really significant moment, because here's Ted's assistant giving him a totally different perspective, a different outlook, and asking him to empathize differently. And Ted turns out to be correct in his way of doing things, of giving Roy the freedom of self-determination and self-discovery. But in this episode, Beard plays a real role in showing leaders the slow game versus the short and temper-filled approach. Right? It's a nice opposite approach. So it's a great intellectual exercise to consider what would the outcome have been if Ted had taken Beard's approach straight on, as opposed to taking a sort of winning at the slow game piece. Jason, what about you? Let me guess. Roy Kent.
You got it. But I mean, I have to give you credit. I mean, Beard is an incredible character in all of this, and it's tough not to like him as we see him develop throughout the season. I think everybody in their leadership needs a good 1-2 punch, and Beard provides that to Ted. And but yeah, it is Roy Kent. Roy Kent forever. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere, right? This is Roy Kent's finest episode, from the opening moments when he's in an ice bath in the locker room, to when he's sitting alone in the stands, to where he shares quiet moments with Keely and his niece. Roy continues to grow, and that's what I love about this character. Although I really want Jason Sudeikis on the show, I actually am coming to a realization that I am a Goldstein. He's like really an idol, and I think he's a hilarious comic and a great writer and producer. And man, would love to see him on here. But enough with that. Let's move on to you, Dr. Vandermeer. Keith, tell us about your favorite character. We want to know.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and I love Higgins, and I loved his conviction that he showed in leaving. And it circles back this episode. I love the Van Damme he grows to represent his look, and
it's a great look.
Yeah, and the way he's handled the decision he's made. But it really comes down this episode, and selfishly, and what I want to talk about this episode, it's Keely. It's Keely, and Garth said it numerous times, and I think Ted Lasso reeks of radical candor. It's all over the place in all these episodes. But for Keely, in a radical candor, I think she's a catalyst in this episode. She really she really pushes things forward for Rebecca and Roy. And I think it has to do with vulnerability, and it has to do with relationships and trust. And I'm excited to expand on that a little bit more. But it's definitely Keely wins this episode.
Yeah, Keely definitely continues to develop throughout, and she brings the best out of Roy, I think, as we see in the closing moments of this thing. She's solid choice. Good start. Dr. Vandermeer.
Yeah, let's just keep going with that, because that scene that you highlighted, with Keely, it is about relationships. And when Roy is questioning his identity being lost if he gives up football, it's Keely that actually brings in different relationships that make up who he is. Bringing in his niece. So yeah, Keith, let's just keep going. Tell us more about what you brought out of this episode.
Well, and I think, what I think it comes down, and I think about leadership and relationships and what they're based in trust, and how we move forward and how we make progress. And not to get too far away from Keely, but there's this level, like when we talk about trust, in my interest, there's this level of cognitive trust in leadership, even in employees in an organization. Like, you can look at the players, you can look at Ted, you can look at Rebecca, and I think it plays out really well with Rebecca in this episode with Ted, because the person that has the job, you have to believe they know how to do the job. The players know how to play soccer. There's this level of trust that exists in your ability to undertake the responsibilities of the job and get the job done. So when you look at, let's say, Ted and Rebecca, and the tension that's leading up because of Rebecca's own selfish motivations, Ted still is trusting her as the manager of the football club to do, and he's doing what he does. He's not questioning a lot of those pieces, right? So, but where do we make progress is where we move past cognitive trust and we get to a more effective trust, a relational trust with each other, and that's deeper, and that's where we see Keely come in with both Roy and Rebecca in this episode. And when you look at Roy and Keely, that's she pushes Roy to really challenges Roy on a level that there's a lot of vulnerability there, and uses the niece to really help Roy step outside himself and really see who he is as a leader, who he is on the team, what is who he is as a human being within the whole context of his own existence, I guess, right? And then you go flip over to the conversation she has with Rebecca, and she really pushes Rebecca to be human, and like, I think the line is, it would change how I feel about you. And that hits her right in the heart. Right. And there's that relational trust in action right there. You can't get there with somebody if you don't have that level of trust. And
I think it's so interesting, Keith, because the highlighting of Keely, because early on I said Keely was my favorite because, and you use these words too, radical candor.
Mm-hmm.
And people always know where they stand with her. And she's always telling people where they stand with her. And the relationship that she builds quite quickly with Rebecca over time, it's in these super vulnerable moments, right? Over the course of the first season. And so when she says, it would change how I feel about you, it does hit her really hard. And I think it's important to note that leaders have to, find, create, seek out these moments of relationship building, vulnerability. And we've talked about this at length on this podcast, in order to get to that level of trust. And it's vital. So
and I
thanks for pulling that out.
Keith, I just love what you said too about that idea of two distinct types of trust. When they come together, is very powerful. One being professional and the other being effective or relational. And as leaders, thinking about, do we trust those around us with the professional work that they do, but then also do we trust them personally? And when those come together, that's pure magic, Keith. And I think we start to see that with Rebecca and Ted in those tender moments in the office as well. So I love those points, Keith.
Well, when I would argue, like, the relational trumps Ted's the cognitive trust the team might have in Ted, because it's pretty obvious from the forefront. Ted has no idea what European football is and how it's played. So, but you can see how the relationships he builds with players and what he works through with his team seems to have a much stronger impact in having them hang in there with him.
Yeah, can you speak more to that? Because before we hit record, you talked about the Latin motto.
Yeah, I love that.
Can you just sort of highlight what you noticed about that?
Yeah, for sure. And watching through the episode a couple of times, all of a sudden I noticed that they have this motto on the kind of just off center of the Believe poster there on the wall in the locker room. But they also, it was right forefront and center at the start of the episode on the recycle bin that Roy was sitting in the ice bath. And it's a Gregarious Firmus Victoria, I believe. And I had to research. I'm like, what does it mean? I'm not a specialist in Latin, let alone English. And and to the best and there's different interpretations, but the most common interpretation was basically slow and steady wins the race, or little steps towards victory, or like being intentional like that. And this term's in education, I've heard many times, and I live by it with educational change. It's go slow to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because often we want to rush into things and that's where we make a lot of mistakes, and change takes time, and good things takes time. And I think this episode was encapsulated by that slogan right on Roy's ice bath. Because if you can see this whole episode, and like you talk about Beard, loving Beard challenging Ted the whole way, but Beard's got his foot on the accelerator. He's trying to let's get this decision done. Let's get planning ahead. Let's get him on the bench so we can move forward and win the next game. Whereas Ted says immediately, I got your back. And you watch the episode unfold, and Ted slowly gets Roy there. And I know he had help from Keely, of course, but he's patient. Ted knows.
Mm-hmm.
Ted wants to win. but it, slow and steady wins the race, and in this episode it sure did.
There's another proverb when I look it up. It's attributed to an African proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I like how they're seeing the interplay between these two, and you can only get to victory. You can only go far if you are together, and you got it. In order for people to go together, you got to have that trust.
Well,
Keith,
Garth,
brilliant.
I really want to hear your feedback. And Keith, I love those pieces. And before we move on, I agree. I think I was out on a business lunch this week with somebody, and the gentleman I was out with said, do you know how you win Super Bowl? Talk about football. No, it was 10 yards at a time. 10 yards at a time. And I think that really does hit home in this pocket. And, Keith, I've seen you coach basketball, and I know that you don't know anything about that sport, but you only succeeded because you're very relational. So I think what you said about Ted not knowing anything about European football is absolutely true and comes from your heart. So thank you for being vulnerable with us and sharing that. Garth, why don't you hit us with what you thought of this episode or leadership lesson you pulled out?
Listen, because I did this, talked about this episode last time, I'll keep it short and brief. But as an educator, I love what Keely did. It's always important to listen to the voices of students, listen to the voices of youth. They can give you great perspective. That's it.
Amazing.
Jason, what about you?
I'm going to be just a little bit longer than that, but not much. I really loved the moment with Rebecca and Ted in the office. I think it passes by as just a simple apology sometimes, but I think it's much more than that. So when she apologizes, she says, all you good people just trying to make a difference. Ted sits quietly and immediately says, I accept your apology. He says, I forgive you. Ted quickly empathizes and shares that, divorce is hard, knowing that he's going through divorce and Rebecca's just gone through divorce. He's immediately connected on a human level and is empathizing deeply. He goes on to say, it doesn't matter if you are the one leaving or the one who got left. It makes folks do crazy things. Heck, I'm coaching soccer in London. And he uses that levity to break the ice, in those moments of, sadness or distress or connection. I think Ted does that with just pure magic where there's just moments there. And he goes on to say, that's about as nuts as it gets. The job you gave me, well, heck, it's changed my life. And it gives me distance I need to see what's going on. This is so layered. Here it'd been easy for Ted to have blamed Rebecca or the team for his relationship breakup. But he doesn't. No matter what he believes in his heart, he's dealing what is actually going on. He goes on to say, but yeah, Rebecca, you and me, we're okay. And I think this moment, he stabilizes the ego between Rebecca and himself. He's really leveling it. And I think, in our leadership and in our practice, I think it's really important to, as we close conversations, to be as mindful as we are as we open them. And closing conversations by stabilizing the ego and saying, when we move forward, this is how we move forward together. Are you okay with that? To whoever you're talking with when you've had those difficult situations. And next time I see you, I'm not thinking about the situation. I'm thinking about the good things. I'm thinking about our connection. I'm thinking about how we are in our best way. I think is really powerful, whether you're working with students or working with staff or working with, parents. And so as they close the conversation, Rebecca hugs Ted and he closes with words, I think that if you care about someone and you got a little love in your heart, there ain't nothing you can't do together. Back to Keith's points about relational leadership and trust, I think that really does put a real button on it.
It's perfect. So that scene just gives me chills. It's just so well done. I appreciate all the stuff that you pulled out of there too, in terms of how they handled themselves, what could have happened, and you got to take a pause. You got to take a beat there. How you're going to react. But listen, we're up on our time here, so let's pivot. We always close with a leadership challenge, Keith, and I'd like to invite you to maybe suggest something that our listeners and even Jason and I might consider to put into practice. Are you open to that?
Yeah, of course. Jason gave me a great segue because it's right it's actually after the last thing that Ted said that Jason quoted, and Ted says one more thing to Rebecca as she's leaving, and because she comes down from the office after that nasty interaction with Rupert. Ooh, still burning about that. But he says to her as it's ending, nice seeing. Yeah, I wrote it down. Nice seeing you down here, boss.
Yeah,
you liven up the place, and so it's visibility. what kind of visibility do you have in your leadership with the people that you work with? And it ties in well, because how do you develop these relationships? How do you develop relational trust? Being visible, being present, being with those you lead and those you work with. So take a moment, take a little visibility stock where you at, and could you be better in that space?
Where and how will you be seen? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that you start with just sit back don't just jump out there. Take stock. like who do you see most often in the school? Right? Where are you most often in the school, and can you be visible elsewhere? I love that.
We know where we often go. So where are we not going?
Yeah.
All right, guys. I really like that. So I hope people do give it a shot, Keith. I know I'm going to, and I can tell Garth will as well. So, and now, Keith, before we close, we rename every episode. So here's your chance to get your name on a podcast. What would you rename this one if you had a chance?
Yeah, and so again, this may be a little bit of a departure, but there's a great book by two Navy SEALs, and I think it's Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and it's called Extreme Ownership. And this episode just is right in that pocket, with all the truth telling, with Rebecca finally coming forward to Ted, going over to Higgins, with Roy owning who he is and where he is in the team, and what his contribution now needs to be to that team as a leader. Extreme ownership right there.
There you go.
A little
nice.
double entendre, because Rebecca is the owner.
Right?
Nicely
played.
She's just changing the way that ownership looks, sounds, and feels like, and we see this in season 2 and 3 too.
100%. That's
Love
awesome.
it, Jason. What's yours?
So inadequate beside Keith's. Mine is just the stone cold truth, but I don't think we should vote for that one. I really do like Keith's. And Garth, where did you land?
Oh, mine's worse. I really like what you had to say, Jason. So mine was I went with this idea of we're okay. That last thing that Ted says to Rebecca, which we keep bringing this one scene up, but it's just like sometimes as a leader, you just okay is enough, and also you have to make sure that you're okay with your people. But no, I think extreme ownership is the winner here.
I thought we're okay was your evaluation of this podcast.
We're just okay. We're just okay, folks.
Just in case you ever wondered what the truth is about how I feel about you and Keith, let me say you two are better than okay. You are 5-star friends.
Shucks.
Yeah, and Speaking of 5 stars, a little self-promotion just before we close. We'd love to hear what you've learned from episode 9. Please give us a little bit of feedback any way you can reach us. And a reminder that if you like what you've heard, rate the podcast and share it with your friends. If we're ever going to get Sudeikis on here, we're going to need your support. So, Keith, do you want to do the honors?
What? It's like bye? I don't know how to.
Garth, show him the way.
Oh my gosh, Keith. We're okay. We're just okay at this point.
We are okay. Yeah.
Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, gentlemen.